Hey everybody, welcome back to the Boileau Family Law Group YouTube channel. I'm Trevor, and today's topic that we're going to be sharing is Family Lawyers Edmonton, costs associated with a divorce. I'm here with Pierre Boileau. He is the Boileau in Boileau Family Law Group, and I have a quick quote that I'm going to share with you from Katharine Hepburn. She said, "Sometimes I wonder if men and women really suit each other. Perhaps they should live next door and just visit now and then." I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I don't know how many times Katharine Hepburn was married.
Maybe more than one.
I would have expected Zsa Zsa Gabor to maybe say that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See, I've been my wife for a while. I don't know how it would work if we lived next door to each other. I don't know if I'd be a good neighbor. Anyways, a quick stat for you. 40% of marriages in Canada end in divorce, and that's from Statistics Canada. That's pretty sobering.
Yeah, pretty significant statistic.
Yeah, so your services are in need for sure. So,
yes.
Topic for today. A lot of people are under the assumption that using the services of a lawyer for a divorce is just going to cost them an outrageous amount of money. And we're going to be talking about that and dispelling some of those myths today. Pierre, first question that I have for you is, when people say that handling your divorce through a lawyer is going to cost a lot of money, they're talking about litigious divorces. Just how costly can litigation be?
Well, unfortunately, the sky's the limit, quite honestly. I think we've all heard the horror stories where people have, the War of the Roses, where people really have lost sight of what it is they want, what it is they sought from the beginning. And they are just so entrenched in their positions that they've just lost complete sight of what the goal is, and they're just spending money and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. From my experience, typically speaking, the most costly of the litigation files are those where people are fighting over custody of their children. Just because of the expert reports required in those types of situations, it is not uncommon where you hear people talk about $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. But those are very rare.
Yeah. It does happen, but they're not as common as everybody thinks they are.
No.
And that's what we're trying to get at today. So there are divorce mediation companies that claim to be a low-cost alternative to lawyers, but they're really comparing litigation to mediation. Now, is litigation the only option that Miller Boileau offers?
No. Thankfully, we offer a number of different approaches to deal with parties who are going through a separation and divorce, really everything under the bigger umbrella of family law. So whether it's mediation, collaboration, arbitration, litigation, all of those options are available when you contact our office, and we would be most happy to sit down and explain to a potential client what the differences are, what they may expect in terms of timelines, costs associated, right? So that they are making then a very, very informed decision as to what option is going to best meet their particular needs and hopefully the particular needs of their partner, spouse, former spouse, that sort of thing.
Excellent. Now, what are individuals not getting when they hire a mediation company rather than a family law lawyer like yourself?
Well, I would say specifically as it relates to comparing it to me, I don't know. I can only speak for my services.
Sure.
I've been doing this. I've been doing family law for 28 years. I've got a host of experience. I'm kind of a chameleon in my approach in that I can do litigation, arbitration, mediation, and litigation. So I've done it all. I've got a vast amount of experience that I can then assist and provide to clients. Again, anecdotally, some of the divorce mediation companies, based on my research, they're actually not lawyers who are behind these companies. While they may have a pretty good understanding of the process, their experience is probably not as vast as what mine would be, or quite honestly any other lawyer in our office.
Right. Now, why is it so valuable to have an experienced lawyer in the mediation process?
Are you asking if I'm the one conducting the mediation, or if I'm assisting?
Well,
because there's a difference. So I'll be more specific.
Sure.
So if I'm assisting a client who then is going to go to another office where they will be conducting a mediation, I can educate my client as to what to expect, what their best case and worst case scenario may look like, particular to the topic that they're going to be dealing with at mediation, because I've done it. I've gone through it and I've mediated, and so I know all of those topics that need to be touched upon. And again, I have the court experience as well as to, if this fails, if the parties do not reach resolution, what are they likely to face if they do have to take their matter to court?
Right. Now, next question that I have for you, Pierre, is what are some of the costs associated with a mediation?
Well, so specific, if I'm conducting the mediation, typically primarily the costs are going to be my meeting time with the clients. I typically book my mediation sessions for a couple of hours, subject to the availability of the parties, but that is somewhat different than what other mediators provide. And the reason for that is I simply think that an hour together simply isn't enough. We're just kind of touching the surface, and we need more time to really delve into the more deeper issues.
Sure.
So costs associated, there's an hourly fee. There may be some photocopy expenses. Beyond that, any other expense that may come up in mediation, we will talk about that expense before either of the parties incurs it. A good example would be getting an appraisal done on a house, for instance.
Right.
I'm not just going to go and order those things. We will talk about it. Is it necessary? Is there a particular company or a particular realtor that they want to, not a realtor, excuse me, an appraiser that they want to hire? So they are driving the bus. They are in charge of the decisions. I will help them brainstorm and look at as many options as possible before we go down a specific path.
Excellent. So Pierre, the next question that I've got for you is how are the costs different from collaboration and arbitration? Like, what are the big differences there? Is it just more time, more resources?
Pardon me. Well, the bigger difference, arbitration, so in most instances, if the parties are choosing one arbitrator, then you are paying for one individual, right?
Okay.
I'll say one expert. Whereas in a collaboration, at minimum, you've got two specialized lawyers who have taken collaborative law. They've got interest-based negotiation skills. Often they have mediation skills, but you're paying for two individuals at the table.
Gotcha.
So off the bat, and I wouldn't say that it's necessarily going to be more expensive for collaboration. Really depends on the parties, depends on the issues, how acrimonious they've been thus far. Are they really positional in their negotiation? Are there any obstacles that can be identified that's holding them back as to why they cannot or have a difficult time making a decision? So on the face of it, yes, collaboration might be more expensive, but it may not be, depending on the circumstances.
Okay, that's a very good rundown of the different ways that people can go about it, and that it's not necessarily going to cost you a whole pile of money to start with a lawyer. Now, what are some ways that a person can minimize their legal fees?
Well, there's a number of ways. I'll talk maybe just a couple of ideas. First and foremost, if you're coming in to see a lawyer and it's the first meeting that you've had with that lawyer, I think it's a great idea to write down on paper two things: what you're most concerned about, and make a list, and a list of specific questions that touch on what those concerns are.
Okay.
So you can be very, you can direct the discussion very quickly, as opposed to having kind of, family law 101.
Right.
Most people don't want that. They really want to delve into their particular circumstances, their particular scares, if you will, what they're afraid of, what their concerns are, so they can really minimize the time needed to deal with those concerns if they take the idea of writing those things down. The other thing, if they've become a client, just be organized. If you're going to bring in and or provide paperwork to our office, bringing in a box of paper strewn about is not cost effective,
Right.
because either myself or a staff member is going to have to go through that, sort through it, organize it. So being organized, oftentimes having things in similar numerical order that we've asked for from them. And last idea is, in terms of saving costs, don't phone the office to find if there's an update. People often do that. I understand why they do that. They're anxious, they're on edge, they want timely results, but contacting the office and asking if there's anything new, we make a point of informing clients as quickly as possible if we've received any sort of update from either the other lawyer or the other party, or could be a third party, could be an accountant or an appraiser or whatever. Soon as that information comes to the office, we make a point of contacting the client, providing that information to the client as quickly as possible.
Excellent. Those are some really great tips that people should really pay attention to. And whether you use Boileau Family Law Group or if you use another family lawyer, they're great tips that you can use to save on your legal fees going forward, should you need to. The next question I have is, does divorce always need to be a long and arduous process when individuals hire a lawyer?
No. Again, dispelling the myth that the minute you hire someone, the lawyer's going to drag it out and the lawyer's going to have you jump through hoops that are completely unnecessary. That is not the case. So in short, it doesn't have to be. Again, if you're very clear in terms of what the goal is, what your expectations are, being clear in terms of what process is going to be the most efficient, the most effective, primarily for you as the client, but perhaps for your partner, your spouse, we will tailor our services to meet those particular needs. And again, where people have perhaps 80, 90, 95% agreement on most issues, we're not going to undo that.
Right.
We want to ensure that they understand what the repercussions are of those decisions having been made without perhaps independent legal advice beforehand. But we're not going to undo that. We want people to be happy, and ultimately we want people to, from a longer term perspective, we want people to be happy with the agreement that's been reached. And statistically, huge stat, I just know from my practice, where people have been the drivers in their own decisions, it is much more likely that they will stick with those decisions longer term than having something that is imposed on them by a judge.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if you are in need of any legal advice or counsel, I suggest that you call Boileau Family Law Group and speak with Pierre or one of the other family lawyers that they have there, and they'll be able to get you started on the right path and give you the information that you need to get started with the process. So you can call them at 780-482-2888, and you can speak with one of these family lawyers in Edmonton, especially Pierre and Marla Miller. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the program, and we will see you next time.